I'd like to call the July meeting of the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council to order. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Hannah will have a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's see. So now Vice Chair Handren, would you take roll for us, please? Whoop.
Sure. I'm trying to bring up our members because I make sure I don't leave anybody out. Chair Dawson.
I am here.
And Councilmember Doss, he's out? Is that right?
I believe he's out now. Yeah.
Okay. And Councilmember Eagles, not here.
Not here.
Councilmember Dickey.
Here.
Councilmember Newhouser. Not yet. Councilmember Nardo Morgan. Here. Councilmember Oldroyd. Here. And Councilmember Cooper.
And I think Cooper and Eagles both let us know they weren't going to be here. So, all right, thank you, Vicky. And just a couple of housekeeping comments. Question and answer and chat are turned off for this meeting. When public comment is open, if you'd like to comment, please use the raise hand function on Zoom to be recognized and promoted to speak. And if at any time it appears that our meeting has been hacked, we'll immediately terminate and reschedule for a future date. Note that item number 7 has been removed from the agenda, and I'll give you a little update on that in a second. Will be continued at a later date. So let's see, for those of you who haven't joined us before, I'd like to thank you for coming and for your participation and engagement in the community. So the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council, or the MAC as we call it, serves the communities of Kenwood and Glen Ellen, as well as the former Sonoma Developmental Center at Eldridge. As the most local arm of county government, we represent people who live and work outside of incorporated cities like Sonoma or Santa Rosa. We are in many ways a country town council. Like other advisory councils in Sonoma County, we were established by the Board of Supervisors to act as a two-way communication channel. The MAC serves as our community voice at county government, as a means for us to learn about and access county resources, and as a place to identify challenges and opportunities and innovate solutions in partnership with our supervisor. Our bylaws limit us to issues concerning transportation, health and human safety, community projects, and emergency preparedness. Others can be added at the request of our supervisor. There are no limitations on subject matter during the public comment section at the beginning of the meeting. And as I was giving that announcement, I realized that I didn't do the land acknowledgement right after the pledge, which I usually do. So we acknowledge that the citizens and communities served by the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Council occupy the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok, who are closely related to neighboring indigenous peoples, the Pomo, the Wapo, and others. Asking forgiveness for past transgressions they and their ancestors experienced, we humbly invite them to join us in person or in spirit as we give gratitude for their ongoing stewardship of this place since time immemorial. Recognizing how much we benefit from their continuing presence as culture keepers and teachers, we commit ourselves to building positive and lasting relationships with our local indigenous community and to honor all the diverse peoples in our region. All right, well, I'm just gonna like to make a few comments, and then we'll open it up for initial public comment. Well, first of all, I tried 3 different people for special guests, and I struck out this month. So I'll try again next month, or I may put out a request for someone else to take on the task of recruiting somebody. seems like everybody should be jumping at the chance to be a special guest for the MAC, but I had a hard time this month. I talked to John McCall this afternoon. He sends his regrets that he couldn't make it today. And basically the reason is that he doesn't feel that they're quite ready to publicize, exactly what's happening with the land trust and Infill Builders. Infill Builders is still working on their proposal, and they're not quite ready to expose that to full scrutiny. But he assured me that next month they would most likely be able to come, and so he's looking forward to having them do that. They're putting a lot of resources into developing a proposal. They would like to have a meeting with the MAC before the September 9th RFP deadline. So that basically means next month. So there's definitely an incentive to do it next month. He's also set up a August 5th meeting on site with Infill Builders. They're going to tour the site. They're going to meet some community members. It's going to be a small group. So at this point, it's invite only. But just to introduce them to the area and to the community. And I take that as a really good sign that they're wanting to meet with us. I am unfortunately not going to be able to be there. So I told John that I'd be happy to have someone else from the MAC go in my stead. And he fully supports one or more MAC members being part of that meeting. And I also just wanted to say that, that we are having an impact. We sent the letter to McGuire last month, and as most of you probably know, we were invited to have a small meeting with McGuire. So it was myself and Kate Eagles and from the MAC, and then Tracy Salcido and Nick Brown from the forum. And Susan Gordon was also there, and Logan Pitts, who's like the head staff member at Senator Dodd's office. He was there. And it was a good meeting. I felt, I don't get any red flags from Senator McGuire as far as he feels very sincere. I felt like he told us what he was able to tell us. He also promised to put together a list of bullet points of what we discussed that we could share with the community. So we're kind of waiting on that to really go public with more of the meat of the discussion. It's not like anything was fully decided, but he just gave us details about a few things. And he assured us several times that the open space preservation is part of the legislation, the original legislation, and that is absolutely going to happen. So, I think it's important to him to be that we recognize that, and I'm inclined to believe that his take on things. And he kind of sat up when I mentioned, it felt like the process was either heavily compromised or broken process from the point of view of the community. So it feels like they're taking us seriously. They're listening to us. And he invited us back for another meeting in September. He said he would have made it August, but they have a lot of bills being passed in August, and it's not a good month for him to do it. So we'll get to meet with him again in September. And he also expressed the hope that this was the beginning of a longer dialogue, which is exactly what my hope was. This is the start of a relationship, stronger relationship with our state representatives. So it feels like we're making a difference here, and we're being heard, and that's been our intent all along. So thank you to all the hardworking MAC members and community members who've gotten us this far. I take all this as a positive sign. Let's see. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're not going to have a special guest tonight. Are there any amendments or corrections to the June minutes? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the June minutes?
Motion to approve.
And do I get a second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. All right, unanimously approved. The June minutes are approved. And now we're going to move on to the public comment. We haven't received any written comments on items not on the agenda. So if you're a member of the public that would like to make some comments, now is the time to raise your hand in the I guess in the chat room or whatever you call that. We're going to give people 2 minutes, and there will be a timer, so just keep an eye on that. And then after the public comments finished, MAC members have an opportunity to respond if they wish. Hannah, do we have anyone in the public who wants to comment?
I'm just taking a look at our attendees now. Not seeing any hands at this time. Give folks a few more seconds. And still seeing no hands.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. Well, this is maybe another quick meeting. Although we do have one guest who I'm excited to introduce you to in a few minutes. So now would be the time for Susan Gorin to speak, but she's not here yet. So Hannah, is there any issue if we move her to later in the program if she's here?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And hopefully Kim Batchelder is here. I'm very pleased to have him speaking tonight. He's a friend and a colleague I've known for probably, I don't know, at least a dozen years. He works for the Open Space District, and he'll tell you more about what he's doing at Open Space. But really, one of the people in the county that I really feel good that we have working for us. And let's see.
So through the chair, I apologize. I gave our guest a 5:45 time to join, and we went a little fast through the beginning. So I don't know if you have 2 more minutes of introduction, but I'll see if I could get him on. I apologize.
I could share my vacation plans.
That would be interesting.
Well, here's just another little tiny update. Susan Oldroyd and I walked with Susan Gorin in the Kenwood Parade. That was fun. And I actually got a couple of hugs. A couple of people ran out from the crowd and gave me hugs. So that was nice. I'm not a big parade person, but you know, I enjoyed that.
The parade was only 1 block long.
Yeah, it was short. Yeah. Yeah. Councilmember Dickey.
Just out of curiosity, who are Infill Builders? I assume that's a business name, correct?
Well, not exactly. It's more of an industry group that was formed, I think 20 years ago. They were concerned about sprawl. So the reason they're called Infill Builders is because they were looking for opportunities to do infill in existing urban areas, which at first glance might sound like not a good fit for us, but you know, John found them through a consultant that he's worked with who knows a lot about housing, and they are very interested in SDC, and they're very interested in working with the community. They've been putting a lot of resources into evaluating a potential project. And according to John, I mean, this is, you know, that they think the number of houses that might work there is probably in the order of a few hundred as opposed to 1,000. So it feels like they could be a good fit. You know, we're still kind of in the initial dating phase here, but and they're on it to, I think if it looks good, they're going to put in an RFP by September 9th. If you would like to meet with them, Matt, you probably could attend that meeting on August 5th.
I would very much like to do so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think being on the CAC, it would, I can, you know, I can wear both caps at the same time. That would be really beneficial, I think.
Okay. I'll
And
make
then
a note. I'm
having
going
been
to
a
talk to.
builder and all the rest. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll let John figure out the numbers, but he wanted at least 1 or more MAC members there. So.
And my exhaustive travel schedule is now over. Thank goodness. Jeez.
Where did you go?
Since the first week of June, I've been to Montana, New York, LA, and Oregon.
Wow.
All for, you know, several days or a week.
Wow.
And man, I'm ready to be home.
There's no place like it for sure.
I had a 4-hour music practice today because we're playing a gig at the Mission Inn on Friday.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I'm back just in time.
I wish I could make it, but next one, let me know.
Yeah, I'll publicize it, or somebody will.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at that.
Yeah, I had the same problem, but I'll respond if you send something to me. Hannah, any news from Kim yet?
He said he'll be right here. Another option would be to take the council member report outs item from later in the
That's a good
agenda
idea.
now,
Yeah.
just so we don't venture too far into the territory of talking about things that aren't on the agenda, but up
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, let's do the report out, and I have a very short one. Transportation, as far as I know, unless Susan has something to add, nothing's really been done with the transportation committee in the last months, but we will get on it. I guess the only thing to say about that is just if people have a chance to read the letter from the Springs MAC that Hannah sent out, that talks about a transportation plan for the Springs. So that might be something to think about down the road. And that's all I have to say about transportation. Yeah, Matt. Oh, just resting your hand. Okay.
I have a report out for our community development ad hoc. I feel like I've already reported this, so correct me if you can cut me off, but we reached out to both the Glen Ellen Forum and the Glen Ellen Kenwood Rotary to get a sense of what people have in mind for community development projects. And at the first meeting, Jim Birch and Ann Dominguez were there, who are very talented professional sign makers and much more than that. And they suggested an idea of coming up with a master plan of community projects and reaching out to different community stakeholders. So we think it's a really good idea, and because it involves a lot of local community groups, organizations, and community members, we can get feedback from a lot of different people and hopefully rank some projects. It's a really big project, and we realize we might not be able to accomplish everything in our tenure. So we are just really focusing on maybe getting a map and reaching out to some individuals and getting the role started. And we were interested in having a discussion with the larger MAC about the scope of the project and how getting feedback from everybody on how we should approach it. We don't want to just go rogue on it. But I understand this is really more for reporting out. So maybe we can discuss that in a future meeting.
That sounds good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Councilmember Morgan.
Vicky, was that the project for the signs, or is that something completely different?
It started out as a project for the signs, but it sounds like the Glen Ellen Forum is working on a sign and would like to continue owning that. So the conversation then moved to, well, what other projects does the community want?
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And any other report outs or community announcements? Yeah, Angela.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the community for stepping forward and helping and connecting and coming to the 150th year celebration for the town of Glen Ellen. It was really great. And we had a lot of support. We got a gold resolution. As you know, Arthur, it's now in the History Center where you are. From the county, Senator McGuire's people showed up, Susan Gorin came, and it was just, Arthur spoke. It was a really lovely event. We had music and food, and the community really loved it. So thanks for all the support from the MAC and from just the community in general.
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, I'm sorry I neglected to mention that, and you had a huge part in pulling that whole event together. So thank you for that. And another community builder. And also I'd like to invite people. There is we have one wall of our eventual downtown history display right behind my office, which is in the old Poppy building, which is kitty corner from the lodge, the building with the stone first story. So anytime the building's open, you can walk in and there's a little sign, just follow that down the hallway. And there's a whole really great exhibit that I was lucky enough to provide the content, and Bright Idea, who I share this this floor with, they're graphic designers, so they actually did put it all together, and then Laurel Glen Winery is also involved, and of course the Glen Ellen Historical Society. So anyway, stop on by sometime, and it's pretty neat. There's some great old maps and pictures and stuff, and it will be expanding in the future to 3 walls. The plan is by the time of the fair, well, it'll be complete. Hannah, have you seen Kim yet?
Yes, we are ready to move on to item 6, but I would suggest first taking public comment on this item.
Oh, on the announcements?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, any public comments on any of the announcements and report outs from the committees?
Giving folks a few moments to raise their hand. And seeing none.
All right. So let's move on to our presentation by Kim Batchelder, who, as I mentioned before, is a colleague and a friend, and we've both been involved in forest and vegetation management in different ways in the county. And so welcome, Kim, and thanks for coming.
There we go. There's my face. Hi, folks. I'm sure you were expecting a young lady, but I am actually Kim Batchelder. I have been working for Sonoma County Ag and Open Space for about 17 years. In fact, I just had my 17th anniversary at the district in July. So I wanted to provide a little bit of background about what the program I'm currently managing. It's called the Vegetation Management Grant Program through Sonoma County Ag and Open Space. And I wanted to share my screen. I think I have that ability, is that right? All right. And let's go to presentation mode. Okay, can you guys see that okay? Fantastic, all right. So again, my name is Kim Batchelder. I've worked as a natural resources planner and been involved with a number of different types of projects, including a trail up on Sonoma Mountain, the creation of an open space preserve up in Healdsburg, and a variety of different natural resource planning projects. But in September of last year, the district asked me to focus on managing this grant program that is part of the county's efforts to help to become more of a resilient community against wildfire and improve the overall health of our natural resources. And so today I want to give a short presentation about what that entails. To a little bit more background is that in 2017, we suffered from the Tubbs and Nuns fire. And this led to a legal action against PG&E. A settlement was agreed upon where the PG&E paid to the county the sum of $149 million. And the Board of Supervisors decided to set aside $25 million for vegetation management per se. And so that includes a number of different tasks. I won't go into all of those, but I'll focus primarily on the vegetation management grant program. And with that, one of the things I wanted to share with you is beginning with kind of a criteria, the selection criteria and project ranking that we used to select this last round of grants. There was a grant round in 2021 where 19 projects were approved, and I helped them to the finish line and getting the grant agreement with the county to be able to spend about $3.2 million in an 18-month period for projects that are working on vegetation management throughout the county. In September, when I was asked to lead this full time, one of the things I felt was really important is to have clear criteria about what we're going to be focusing on, what should this grant support across the county. We have a very diverse county. We have a high risk of fire in many areas, some higher than others. And so what we really wanted to do is focus on those areas that are very vulnerable to fire, wildfire, and ways in which we could apply vegetation treatments such as strategic fuel breaks or prescribed fire, using understory thinning to be able to reduce some of that fuel load and create some space between the ground and the canopies. Prescribed grazing is another factor that we really wanted to support. Some additional factors that we took into consideration in 2022 were things that included multi-benefits of projects. So looking at the whole ecosystem at a landscape level to try to think about actions that could be taken place and across multiple landowners. So there was collaboration, there was an opportunity to do something on a larger scale than a defensible space. Organization that is focused on the protection of our natural resources and our landscapes, that was something that the district really felt strongly about and got support from the board. So other factors included benefits to lower income or highly vulnerable communities, organizational capacities to be able to manage a large grant as such as these, support to local workforce and workforce development. That's a factor that we've really seen as an important factor to how to make this work sustainable. That's one of the key words we're trying to really emphasize is how do we make these projects not something that's just a one and done, but in fact, something that's going to be long lasting and something that's going to really protect our communities over time. We wanted to see project engagement with multiple communities and multiple landowners, as I mentioned. And then obviously projects that looked at like pilot projects that were advancing public education, had a unique scalability of being able to ratchet up their efforts. That was something that we really wanted to encourage as well. And so when we received about 40 proposals in 2022, we put each one of those into this elaborate spreadsheet. For each proposal, we were able to break down the proposals and evaluate these different criteria in the context of a scoring system. And I won't go into all the detail here, but essentially we had 8 different reviewers representing CAL FIRE, Permits Sonoma. We had various agencies like the Audubon Canyon Ranch, who has a lot of experience in prescribed fire. We had ag and open space staff that was well-versed in best management practices for fuel breaks, as well as grazing efforts, and a variety of other folks who were able to provide their technical expertise on how to evaluate these different projects. So each one of the projects were evaluated based on the merits of their proposal that they submitted and evaluating their technical capacity to be able to do the job on the ground. We also looked at ways in which the proposer was looking to enhance the environmental qualities of their particular area. So wildfire is the highest criteria, but we also wanted to see how any grantee might be able to look at protection of watersheds, the ability to try to enhance wildlife corridors if that's an opportunity there. So all those factors were rolled up into an overall score per candidate, and we were able to select 19 different projects that we supported this year. I wanted to show this map first before I just focus on the 2022, because this gives you a good sense of where we've experienced fires across the last 5 years and where we've identified projects and funded projects since 2021. So I'll just move my screen here. So in 2021, we supported 26 projects covering about 1,100 acres of treatment area. So that might impact a larger area, such as some of the prescribed burns might be more extensive than that. But we wanted to demonstrate the types of treatments that were being supported in 2021 versus 2022, where we supported about $3.1 million worth of grant projects. We tried to be aware of distribution geographically so that there was representation in each district, but we found that there were limited number of proposals that were submitted primarily in District 2 and 3. There were no proposals in 2022, largely because there's not as great of a threat as we see in districts 1, 4, and 5. So a lot of the projects did end up being in those 3 districts. We have a project scale symbology on kind of the left-hand side of the screen that highlights defensible space and roadside treatments. That was heavier use in 2021 versus 2022. We focus more on the opportunities to do prescribed burns, shaded fuel breaks, things that, again, we're looking at multiple treatments across larger landscapes. And that bear true in the results of that project. So here are the projects that were selected in 2022. Those closest to the area that you are working in are perhaps the Bennett Ridge Defensible Space Project, where they're trying to create a buffer between the wildland of Annandale State Park and the communities of Bennett Ridge. In the south, closer to the town of Sonoma, we supported the Garricky Roadside Treatment Project, where they really showed a good need for emergency access, where there was only one route in and one route out. So to get emergency vehicles in, that's one risk. To get people out, that's another risk. So we decided to support that project to think about ways in which they can cut back the vegetation and then work together with fire services to identify the most strategic way to evacuate people or put them in safer places where they will not succumb to a wildfire in that region. So they're up in the county, or in District 1 in particular, we supported the Trinity Ridge Fuel Break. And I'm excited about this project. It's led by Sonoma Resource Conservation District. They are creating a shaded fuel break between Nuns Canyon Road and Trinity Road. And what I like about this project, it really does protect the communities in the lower portion of the valley, Glen Ellen, and I think there's a community called Valley Oaks. Arthur, what's the name of that community down right next to the school? There's a subdivision.
I'm not sure yet. I mean, it'd be part of Greater Glen Ellen, but
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and it's Glen Ellen per se. And then another thing that I liked about this is it's continuation of work that Ag and Open Space, regional parks, Napa Firewise are doing on the county border, where they're creating another shaded fuel break. So there's successional shaded fuel breaks that are being aligned as you go from the top of the ridge along the Mayacamas down closer to the valley, so that firefighters will have good access and be able to use a variety of different tools by being able to establish those shaded fuel breaks. So with that, I just want to kind of share some of the changes in 2022. We really were excited to see that 55% of the projects were using multiple treatments. So that might be a shaded fuel break followed by prescribed burning or grazing to help reduce the amount of fuels in those areas. We also supported different projects like the roadside treatments in special cases. And here's kind of the range of project amounts that we were able to fund this year. So here's a couple examples, primarily this one in the Trinity side, the Cavedale Trinity side, Trinity roadside treatment was about 10.3 miles of roadside clearances. This was funded in 2021, and this was a high priority because this area had been burned pretty severely during the Nuns fire, and then also got hit by portions of the glass. So we wanted to support that project at that year. And then it also protected the critical assets such as the water tanks and fire station up there on Trinity Road. In another portion of the county, Coast Ridge Forest Council, they had put in for purchasing a chipper so they could do community trainings and then volunteer work days to basically allow improve the roadside vegetation clearances with each landowner, and then be able to have better evacuation routes from those communities. And this is another project that the Northern Sonoma County put together. It's called the Mill Creek Shaded Fuel Break Network. And here they established 3 different shaded fuel breaks that were subject to the Wall Bridge fire. So this area had been burned pretty heavily. And so the idea was to try to establish clear shaded fuel breaks that would be hopefully will be able to protect communities in Hillsburg as well as to the west and south of those areas. And then finally, I want to end with one project that we're developing that's using a variety of different tools to kind of link different communities. So this is the communities of Oddfellows Recreation Club, Summer Home Park, as well as the Canyon Road communities. And we're working to establish a shaded fuel break that would stretch from essentially a Highway 116 on the west side all the way to Martinelli Road on the east side, and basically work on a ridge line to be able to reduce the amount of threat of wildfire going down into those heavily populated areas along the Russian River. So that's kind of an example where we're going to be using a tool called the California Vegetation Treatment Program, which is an EIR and a higher level of CEQA analysis, but allows us to do treatments on that site over a period of 10 years versus a notice of exemption or mitigated negative declaration. That's only for a year or the life of one particular project. So a little bit of a different. So kind of the lessons learned after we've finished up this last round of grants that where we were able to sign grant agreements by the end of June. And now all those projects are getting going. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that as we started to do this, evaluate these project proposals in 2021 and 2022, we're really finding that there's a technical gap and that there's a need for support to communities who have a good idea, a good project proposal, but they are deficient in maybe the project design or the technical prescriptions that they would apply. And in often cases, the environmental compliance, they might suggest it's a notice of an exemption, but in fact, it requires a higher level of CEQA analysis that they weren't prepared to do. So we really want to work with those groups to be able to improve those attributes to be able to support projects across the county that are still in that kind of early phase of their design so they can get better technical assistance. Another factor that we really want to work on is outreach and education. Obviously, I think this type of presentation is a great opportunity for us to share information to all kinds of different communities throughout the county. We're a big county, but we're aiming to serve the entire county and meet the needs of these different groups who are trying to put together these proposals. And then finally, I wanted to end on a description of a planning and technical assistance mini grant is what I'm calling them, where we hope to provide between $5,000 and $50,000 to in technical assistance. This wouldn't be a grant to do implementation, but it would be really to address that that factor I mentioned earlier, just closing the gap of technical assistance, where groups can solicit technical assistance that's focused on project design or technical specifications of their project, or maybe get support on the environmental compliance, even grant writing, so that if they're unsuccessful applying to our grant program, think about how this would help to apply for other grants such as CAL FIRE fire prevention programs. So that's just kind of where we're still developing that. And I hope to provide more information to folks like yourselves as we so with that, I wanted to stop sharing my screen and see if you have any questions. It's a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have tonight. Or if there's something that you want me to provide more information via email correspondence, or I can provide you links to different websites that might be helpful as well.
Thank you, Kim. And yeah, lots of good work. Really very impressive. And you think how far we've come in the last 5 years. And so thanks for all that good work. Any comments or questions from council members? Yeah, Councilmember Dickey.
Just sort of curious as to how many of these projects require ongoing maintenance. I mean, once you have cleared these areas, I mean, I assume that there's probably going to be a requirement for, I don't know, doing them every, what, 2 years, 5 years, depending on rainfall, obviously. But what's sort of the projection of that? And then how do we pay for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's come up a lot. And that's why we really try to emphasize kind of a shift towards projects that really have contemplated how they will go about doing that maintenance part of it. In many of these types of treatments, the most expensive part is the establishment of the treatment, doing the initial cut, if you will. So let's take, for instance, a shaded fuel break. That will be removing some stems to provide better spacing, removing understory vegetation along a ridge line, for example, to be able to provide better access for fire service agencies. But whoever is designing and developing that project will ultimately be responsible for maintaining it as well. And so one of the things that we really want to work with is trying to think about how that's going to be most cost effectively done. So it might, hand crews are probably the most expensive type of expenditure. And so to send in a hand crew, you're absolutely right. If we send in a hand crew every 2 to 3 years, we're going to be busted in a matter of years in a very short period of time. So what we're trying to consider is other more feasible ways of doing it, such as using prescribed burns in a very limited area to be able to maintain that understory at a low level and not creating those fuel letters later in the project's lifespan. Another factor that's really becoming pretty prevalent is the use of grazing, using goats and sheep to get on these sites and be able to munch down that vegetation on a pretty good cycle so that we don't have to come in every 5 years and have a heavy hit with a hand crew. So those are some of the ways that we're trying to advocate with the different grantees that have received funding so far.
Thanks, Kim. Other comments or questions? Yeah, Councilmember Newhouser.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for your presentation. Very concise, very, very informative. I appreciate that. I may be more on the skeptical side of vegetation management, and having compatible fire management and restoration or conservation of habitat. And so I have a couple of questions, but one related to what Councilman Member Dickey asked about maintenance. And one thought was that I was wondering if you've considered requiring landowners to provide all the follow-up as a prerequisite for a cost share. And then also regarding the grazing and I think prescribed fire is probably the most ideal, but as we know, it's very difficult to do, especially in close proximity to homes. It's just usually a non-starter. But I've seen what goats can do, and they're pretty indiscriminate, and supposedly you can train them. But I guess I'm very concerned about the loss of our understory in order to protect people. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, and I wonder if the Open Space District has done any calculations on, how much understory is being lost in fire protection.
Right. That's a really good question. It's pretty complicated. I think one of the things I want to kind of set the record is that we started this program based on our need to respond to some severe fire burns where we the wildfires dictated what happens with our vegetation and our homes. And so the Board of Supervisors wanted us to create a grant program from the get-go. So we got funding on the ground to work with the communities that have been burned, as well as help to protect these highly important strategic areas, but also start to work on tools that can help us to reduce the risk of fire, as well as be better planned on how to access an area in the future. So regarding the understory question, I think one of the things I want to share is that the types of treatments we're advocating for are pretty narrow in scope. That working with CAL FIRE, we have identified a number of different ridge lines that are important on the, typically on the northeastern slopes, so that the trajectory of winds that are coming during a Diablo event or these heavy weather events, how do we start to create these systems of, kind of like I mentioned on the Calabasas Creek Shaded Fuel Break and the Trinity Ridge project, where you have successive lines of entrance to be able to do things like a backburn in the case of a fire. The alternative is sending in large machinery and cutting indiscriminately across these lines, which leads to severe erosion, severe habitat destruction, and we're restoring that. We're spending a lot of money restoring it at the end of the day. So I think what we're trying to find is that balance. And Misty Arias and I have really been trying to put our kind of fingerprint on this program, where we are looking at how to enhance the environmental values of each treatment that we're trying to advocate for. So when we look at a project, is it advocating for wildlife corridors as well? Can they be working together so that, or we're trying to build up our capacity to be able to provide training in that. I'm literally finishing up the last parts of a proposal due tomorrow for a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, where we want to advocate a training program where we really contemplate this comprehensive perspective of looking at wildfire resilience, but that not only that, but look at carbon sequestration and watershed protection and enhancing biodiversity. Those factors, we want to show a program that really takes leaps and bounds that really move in that direction. So I can't answer your question directly as far as the amount of understory loss, but I think we are working in that direction so that we're starting to hopefully get some understanding of how we balance everything from prescribed burns, which can be a heavy impact on understory, but also, by contrast, wildfire is a pretty heavy hit on our ecological systems as well. So I hope that I hope I didn't dance too much around your question.
No, I realize that was a difficult question, and it's a conundrum, if you will,
Yeah.
and it's one that we're having to find a balance. And I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to put your imprint on these plans and the priorities, because we need people like you and Misty who have an ecological background who can help to move toward reaching that balance. So that's wonderful. I have a softball question for you, follow-up. I mean, we're in the process of doing a plan, for our community, and a fire safe plan, and we will eventually have a fire safe council here in Glen Ellen, and eventually in Kenwood as well. And people are already asking about how to tap into some of these funds. So it's a two-part question. One is, how much longer will the funds last? Because it's going to go away probably at this rate in 4 to 5 years. And then the other is a very mundane question. We want to focus on getting rid of like broom, but the fire department doesn't want to grind it up in their chippers because they can't move it around because it's an invasive plant. So we're forced with having to pile it and either burn it or chip it in place with our own equipment. Anyway, so it's something to think about if you don't have an answer for. But broom is a huge issue in our area. It's overtaking the understory in the oak woodlands, and we need to come up with a solution for that.
We are experiencing that in spades when it comes to our ag and open space lands at Calabasas Creek that we transferred to regional parks. About 95% was burned. Also, Saddle Mountain was hit by the glass fire. So we see the amount of regeneration of French broom and Scotch broom, it's just ridiculous. And so trying to stay ahead of that, that's a really difficult question. I think what we've seen most effective is trying to get on it early so the population doesn't explode, and trying to hand pull as much as possible. I know that's sometimes completely unfeasible, but that's been the most effective when you're actually getting it rootstock and when the soils are soft and before it goes to seed. We also know that the seed banks stay forever. So fire after that type of treatment is another tool that's been effective in some of these projects. So those are probably the only things I can add there. And I was focused on the broom question. What was the other question regarding?
Oh, just the funding. How much longer?
Funding, right, okay.
We're hoping to have a plan by the end of the year, which would hopefully make us more, acceptable as a entity to gather funds.
Right. Not as softball as I'd like, but I'll go with it anyway. So here's we have we've completed 2 years of funding and now have about $14 million left of the grant. It's gone into other investments into developing some tools to help us prioritize our work. So we still have about $14 million, and we are working with the Board of Supervisors in what we call a Healthy Forest Ad Hoc with primarily Supervisor Hopkins and Supervisor Gore to develop a strategy that we would like to present to the Board of Supervisors to determine whether we can continue to provide this type of funding in the format of a grant, but also address some of the high priority areas and be as strategic as possible. So the reason I mentioned the grant that we're going for with in the Russian River Corridor is that that grant's going to help leverage the PG&E funding. And that's our objective, is that not to let this thing run out when the last dollar of PG&E is spent, but in fact, get other funding sources. There's a lot of different grants that are out there, and the board has instructed me to be pretty proactive in trying to get grants to support this continuation of a grant program. So we hope to go to the board at the end of October, beginning of November with that strategy to hopefully continue doing an annual grant program, such as we've done in the last 2 years, that has really started to gain some great ground, and then be able to continue doing technical assistance and support to groups like yourself that are forming your plan, needing technical assistance of different forces or different sources, and being able to go forward with that effort. And so even if the grant program isn't supportive, we will help you to get other funding sources. That's why we wanted to make it more holistic when it comes to like the CAL FIRE fire prevention program and things like that. So working hand in hand with CAL FIRE, Permit Sonoma. That's another factor I wanted to share with you pretty briefly, is that part of my team consists of the technical advisory committee, which is CAL FIRE, and a lot of people that served on the project evaluation committee. But one of the things we do is just serve as a sounding board to different initiatives. And so about a month ago, we had John Mack from Permit Sonoma present his rollout of how he anticipates using the hazardous mitigation or fuel mitigation project funding from FEMA and the BRIC Foundation, or the BRIC funding that's also from FEMA. And so those are two multi-million-dollar efforts to try to provide communities with support. And so the more advanced that you have your proposal, when his money is ready to hit the ground, you will be ready for that other source of funding as well. So it's one of the things that the board has asked us to do, is try to consolidate the different sources of funding and all be marching on in the same direction, so that there's no competition of the same dollars. We're trying to support each other to use the different tools that are rolling out, and so that the ones that benefit are the communities throughout the county.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Arthur.
Hey, Kim. Yeah, I was just kind of curious if PG&E might have any plans to do continuing funding of this type, since there's a good chance they're going to be liable again in the future for some additional wildfires. And sort of in that same vein, are insurance companies considering funding some of this stuff that might save them money in the long run as well?
Those are really great questions. I have not worked directly with those two different sources of funding. We do have a partner at UC Extension that is doing a lot of work on looking at that insurance question. And many people are starting to experience an elevation of their rates. And so how can we compensate? How can we work with the insurance companies to say, well, what if they're doing good defensible space? What if they're doing resource management or have received grants for different ways to treat their property? Can that reduce the rate? Can you show a net positive by them protecting their assets? So that's one way we think that might work. And then with PG&E, there's kind of two veins. The county is trying to think about ways in which PG&E can be more proactive in working with our local governments, so that if they're doing clearance of a vegetation under a power line, if they can tap that into an existing shaded field rate that we're trying to develop, that helps create a larger extended area that can helpfully protect communities down below. But regarding them actually participating in additional funding, we haven't broached that subject yet. That's probably on the list of kind of continue funding of this program. So that's a good idea. I really appreciate that feedback.
Thanks, Kim. Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, well, let's move to public comment. So any members of the public who'd like to comment or ask questions, please raise your hand and Hannah will promote you.
And Chair Dawson, we have a couple hands raised, so I'll go ahead and share the timer slide. All right. And our first commenter is Jay. Jay, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Jay.
Hi, guys. It's nice to see you here today. I want to start off right away and just thank Kim. Thank you, Kim, for your many, many years of fine service to this county and this valley. You have done many, many, many things down here that's helped us be both aware and prepared for many ecological issues raised by the Open Space District. So again, thank you. The question I really have is, have you been able to approach or secure cooperation or devise any system of getting full cooperation from the local fire departments, who I think are really well positioned to identify vegetation management issues, as well as to help? It's a big issue how well you can graft the programs together. They're very busy with lots of training and lots of stuff, and I recognize that coping with outreach to these many fire departments can be difficult. But what has your experience been so far, and are you able to improve it? Does it seem like a likely source of help and administration for your projects here with vegetation management? That's about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Jay, for your kind words, but I also appreciate that question because I think we have allowed fire service entities to apply for a grant program under the same scrutiny of the criteria that we are trying to fulfill. And in 2021, we did support the Sonoma Valley Fire District to complete to purchase a chipper and a vehicle to transport the chipper and generate a number of different training events to help people do their own defensible space work. And then the chipper program was designed to essentially serve as an additional arm to what our county chipper program does. And so Sonoma is in one of those outreach areas where it's tough for the crews to spend a whole day going out and doing a chipper program and going back to the station in Santa Rosa. So working together with Steve Mercichuk, we looked at the values of having those different chipper programs in the outlying areas of the county. And so that's one example of our collaboration with a local fire service. In I think the Cavedale Trinity Road project, again, was working with the Mayakama Fire District, where they were identifying the road as a very important part of safe evacuation and also egress for emergency vehicles. In that case, the area had been burned pretty heavily, and so there were a lot of threatening trees and vegetation that was going to that could potentially disturb evacuation routes. So those are kind of the examples that come to my mind. We have been working with Cindy Foreman from the Sonoma County Fire Department on various initiatives. It was her support of the Bennett Valley or Bennett Ridge project that we saw as favorable for that group, and saw the value of trying to protect that community from the wildlands area and Annandale State Park. So we are completely open. I think we have pretty good relationship. Our technical advisory team includes Ben Nichols, Chief Forester for CAL FIRE for the Napa, Lake, and Sonoma counties. And he's been instrumental in being able to help us kind of bridge the gap about fuel treatments and meeting the needs of local fire departments. But one of the things that I wanted to share is like one of the challenges they have is their jurisdiction is largely house fires, emergency, medical emergencies, for instance, and those types of factors are just the small list of things that they are also responsible for. So for them to take a really proactive role on defensible space and things that really helps us to move things along, sometimes they are stretched too thin to be able to help with that. But our hope is that through funding that Permit Sonoma's bringing to the table, they have a high interest in working on defensible space and home hardening. And so they are absolutely going to be working closely with the fire departments so that those lessons learned, that funding can be able to be equitably dispersed to communities throughout the county.
All right, thank you, Kim. And Hannah, another members of the public?
The next commenter is David. David, you should be able to unmute.
Welcome, David.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Just wanted to ask about a little more follow-up, if possible, from Kim on the FEMA grants administered from Permit Sonoma, and specifically the BRIC grant, which is a total of about $50 million, 3/4 from the feds and 1/4 from the county using some of the PG&E funds. And just curious about what more information you maybe have, Kim, about the rollout plan for that or how that will work. Will there be a grant-like program for organizations to apply, or will it be more sort of coordinated centrally? And also just regionally, how will they get back, and what sort of is the timing, is your understanding of how that may roll out? Thanks.
Right. Thank you for that question. I wanted to share kind of the tip of the iceberg so you guys are motivated and excited about something that's coming down the road. I don't want to steal John Mack's thunder on trying to roll this program out, but we've had a lot of conversations about it. I think their idea is to try to create technical teams for each district so that the teams can evaluate all the high priority projects and try to provide funding to those projects. And I believe Permit Sonoma is interested in having contracting the service providers to be able to do the work under contracts directly with Permit Sonoma. And that way they manage the resources from beginning to end. And also it's the federal funding is always a little bit more complicated. I think I'm very happy that I'm managing a fund like PG&E. We have a little bit more flexibility. With FEMA, the number of bureaucratic steps you have to follow is really pretty cumbersome. So I think that's kind of the reason why the program is aimed at a more tighter control and maybe not go through a grant program like we're offering, but instead do more direct technical assistance and implementation through Permit Sonoma using a variety of different service providers. That's what I know right now, but I think we're hoping that at the end of July, beginning of August, we're gonna get more information out. The teams will be starting to form and working with a variety of different service providers in each area. But to Mark's point about the need to develop these community wildfire protection plans and fire safe councils, that really helps us understand, us as the county, to understand that you guys are really putting in the effort to identify the highest priorities in a way that's driven by the community. So those types of efforts, I think, are highly respected, and we want to, I think this grant will help to support those efforts as well.
And Kim, if I could follow up on that just really briefly, the funding you're projecting for this, did you say VIC funding? That it's going to be run by Permit Sonoma. Would they then be hiring? You would have a pool of pre-screened contractors,
Right.
which is, I think, how the county typically works. Would that just be for technical assistance, or would it be also for implementation of the actual vegetation?
I think it's going to be soups to nuts. So it's going to be helping the design of the project to make sure the design and the project is really solid. And then it will not be technical assistance other than getting the job done. So it's going to be implementation. That's the way it's being laid out to us. And then to go, it's called the Building Resilient Communities and our Infrastructure and Communities. And it's also called BRIC, BRIC.
I see.
And that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about, that the BRIC is designated for 3 specific areas. One's around Rio Nido in a heavily forested environment. Another is in the Upper Mark West area, which is an oak woodland mix of habitat types. And the third site would be the Katati Pengrove area, which is more of a grassland habitat. And so that's the BRIC funding. And then the hazard mitigation, hazardous fuel mitigation project is also a FEMA supported project, but that's the one I'm referring to as technical teams that will be addressing how to address fuel reduction in a variety of different places in the county.
And who should we follow up with after this, in the near future, about more details on funding for these types of projects?
So I can serve as that point person for the county. Our technical advisory committee is pretty well connected. We do want to create a website. That was one of the requests that the board members have mentioned to us several times, is to create a website where you will have good access to information on funding sources, best management practices for vegetation treatments, permitting, things that are really tied into everything related to vegetation management. That's taking a little bit of time to roll out, but we have some great people working on it, and hopefully that will be a good source. Feel free to send me emails. Happy to respond to that. If there's a question specific to other funding sources that Permit Sonoma is managing, then that would probably be a good person. I can read you to that as well.
Excellent.
right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
They're starting to
And-
staff up on that. Mhm.
And let's get back to the public comment. Hannah, anybody else in the wings?
And we can just do one final call. But I'm not seeing any further hands. So I'll go ahead and close public comment.
Okay, well, I think that takes you off of the hot seat, Kim, but really a great presentation and but there's just so many details in this whole thing and so much to know and appreciate somebody who's got their head around it and can advise the rest of us. So thank you again.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to your board. It's always helpful for us to get these invites and be able to share this information. If you have any comments that you want to send to me via email, Hannah has my contact information here, and you do too as well, Arthur. So feel free to send me an email and give me any kind of feedback you have. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Good night, folks.
Okay, I think we're down to the last item on the agenda, which is consideration of items for future agendas.
And through the chair, if you don't mind, I think it might be helpful if any folks joined us later in the meeting to let them know that item 7 was continued to a later date and that item 8 was taken earlier in the meeting. So, sorry to interrupt.
Right, now it's okay. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. So do I need to say anything more about that, or item 7 hopefully will be moved to August? I guess is the gist of that. When John McCall from the Land Trust will be able to bring in infill builders who are probably going to put in a proposal for SDC. So so next month could be a big meeting. And I'm pretty confident that will happen because they want to, if they decide to go ahead with it, they want to talk to the community before the RFP deadline on September 9th. So next month would be the time. Okay, shall we move ahead to items for future agenda? And of course, I just mentioned item for next month. So yeah, Mark.
Well, I think Vicki mentioned earlier in the meeting about a discussion about the Community Projects Development Ad Hoc Committee, and really would like to get some input from other board members, council members, to discuss the proposed plans for this master planning process that we're proposing, and also for contacts, people to reach out to. So if we could get that on the agenda, that would be great.
All right, yeah, sounds good. Any other ideas for future agendas? All right, well, any comments from the public with ideas for future agendas?
Giving folks a few more seconds and seeing no hands.
Okay, well, amazing. We're I don't know if we're done sooner than last week, but I mean last month, but another early meeting, which we deserve. So next month will probably be longer if it turns out the way it looks like it will. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? I mean,
Motion.
we don't have to, but yeah.
I so move.
Okay. And second, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So unanimously adjourned, and thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you, Arthur.
And we'll
Thank you,
see
Arthur.
you next month.
All right. Everybody be well out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Bye.